Hello and welcome back for another historic video. Today we're going to be taking a look at this Goblin aggro deck. The deck centers around the cards Kuldotha Rebirth and Gleeful Demolition, both of which let us destroy or sacrifice one of our artifacts, and then we get to create 3 1/1 Goblin token creatures, allowing us to get off to a pretty quick start. Notably, the Gleeful Demolition can also target one of our opponent's artifacts to just destroy it without giving us the goblins. To support this, we're playing 4 copies of Bonesaw, 0 mana artifact, has the additional benefit of giving our creatures +1 power if we want to equip it later in the game when we don't have one of our Demolition or Rebirth effects. Ornithopter, also a 0 mana artifact, the 0/2 with flying, potentially could be pumped by some of our lords as well to get in for some combat damage, but usually just going to be sacrifice fodder. And then lastly, Tormod's Crypt, another 0 mana artifact that lets us sacrifice it to exile target player's graveyard. So this acts as both sacrifice fodder and as some graveyard hate in the deck. And additionally, we're running 4 copies of Great Furnace that can also be sacrificed. Then once we have our goblins in play, we're going to be looking to play some of these pump creatures. We have 4 copies of Goblin Bushwhacker, can be kicked for a red mana, and when it does, creatures we control get +1/+0 and haste until end of turn. Rundvelt Hordemaster, 2 mana 1/1, gives other goblins we control +1/+1, and then additionally, whenever a goblin we control dies, we get to exile the top card of our library, and if it's a goblin, we can cast that card until the end of our next turn. Burning Tree Emissary is a 2 mana 2/2, and when it enters, we get to create red-green, which could allow us to play out multiple emissaries in a turn, and also curve into things like the Hordemaster and also the Reckless Bushwhacker, or just have a value turn where we play the emissary into something like a Rebirth. And the last pump spell we have in the deck is the Bushwhacker. This is a 3 mana 2/1, but it has Surge, meaning we can cast it for 2 mana if we've already cast another spell this turn. Combo's great with the emissary, which will generate the mana to pay the surge cost, or one of our 0 mana artifacts that we can play out first to reduce the cost. When the Reckless Bushwhacker is cast for the surge cost, other creatures we control get +1/+0 in haste until end of turn, allowing us to have some very aggressive opening hands. Once we get into the mid and late game, if our opponent has some blockers on the battlefield, we can still sacrifice our creatures into them if we're wide enough. Otherwise, we're going to want to use some of our burn spells. At 1 mana, we have Goblin Grenade, lets us sacrifice a goblin and deal 5 damage to any target. And then we also have 3 copies of Stoke the Flames. It's a 4 mana instant with Convoke, and it deals 4 damage to any target. So once we have a fairly wide board, we should have no problem casting this using the Convoke cost. The mana base, quite simple, just the 4 Great Furnace mentioned earlier, and 13 mountains. The deck has an extremely low curve, which is why we're only running 17 lands. So the strategy is simple. Come out of the gates blazing, and then, if needed, try and finish the game off with our burn spells. Notably, we are going to be looking for opening hands, which have either the Demolition or the Rebirth, and the ability to cast them, as our pump spells are really not very useful if we don't already have some goblins in play. Essentially, we're looking to come out of the gates blazing and just outrace what our opponent is trying to do. Before we jump into the gameplay, I'd like to ask you to please like and subscribe the video. It really helps the channel. And without further ado, let's jump into the games. This hand is okay. Can't play out Bushwhacker on 2. 1 mulligan. Much better. And we'll put back one of the crypts. Thoughtseize could either take the crypt or the Rebirth. Crypt was pretty fast, meaning we're likely up against a reanimation strategy. Just going to be a race here to see if we can kill our opponent before they're able to reanimate. Bushwhacker, swinging for 8. Are they going to use a removal spell? Love that. Hate the fact that it's Iona in the graveyard, though. Death. Well, that means our opponent is dead. Good game. This hand is pretty good. We do need another mana. Unfortunately, no land. We'll just play out a Bushwhacker unkicked. Try and draw a land next turn, push more damage. Unfortunately, miss again. We'll use one of our Goblin grenades. Hopefully this turns off our reanimation from our opponent. A reunion, so unless they have removal here, we should win the game. Won this one on one land. Made it a lot more difficult than it needed to be. This hand is okay. We do need another mana. We'll play out the Ornithopter, and then usually we like to start on Rebirth, since Gleeful Demolition can also target our opponent's artifacts. Opponent's going to have a chump blocker here. We'll kick the Bushwhacker, get in for 8. They generate a wall. Good blocker for our tokens. And then the Pinnacle Star Cage. Going to exile everything. That is pretty brutal. Notably, the tokens never come back, even if the cage is removed. And the Bushwhacker will just come back as a 1/1. They return the Birth. Get another Plains here. We'll play out the Hordemasters, hit for 4. Another wall. And then Doomscar. So this is going to be a tremendously tough matchup for us. Don't flip over any goblins. We'll Demolition our Bonesaw. Pass the turn. Opponent gains some life. Do they have another board wipe? They do. So, just never going to win this matchup. This hand is pretty good. Can lead off on the Rebirth, and then turn 2 we can curve Emissary into Hordemaster. Opponent has a Surveil land. Hit for 6. Gonna hold on to the Bonesaw for Surge. They shock in. And a Verdant Dread. So they're looking to flicker their cards into stuff like Omniscience. Let's see, we're definitely playing out the Hordemaster. Opponent is forced to chump block here. Based on that, we are going to play out the Bone Saw and force them to chump one of our 3-drop. We don't want them to block the Hordemaster, as that would weaken our board, and they just concede essentially. This hand is just mediocre. We'll keep it. Double Tormod's Crypt is strong against a reanimation strategy. Then we'll play out the Crypt here as well. Don't think we need to play out the Ornithopter. Bushwhacker is the only thing that could give them power, and we can't cast it yet. We don't have a second land. Swing for 3. And then, not that it matters, but now we'll play out probably at least one. If you Goblin Grenade the Outcast, try and slow them down. Could hit what comes out of it, be a ninjutsu. See if it's a Yuriko. Yeah, just a hacker, so feel good about not wasting the Goblin Grenade there. But we're in a pretty bad spot. Second Rebirth is not terrible. So we'll use that on the Ornithopter. Play out another one. We're hoping this Goblin Grenade takes our opponent by surprise and that they let their life total get too low. Then we'd also have to dodge something like a Force of Negation on it or a Counterspell. Here we will take the trade with the hacker. I know they can ninjutsu in the Lord, and it will be a favorable trade for our opponent here. There it is. Looks like they also have another 2-mana ninjutsu in their hand that's holding priority here. Or it could be another Furmaster. And they have a 1000-Face Shadow, so we are in a bit of trouble here. We'll play out the Emissary. And I think we do have to take out the Shadow. It's just too potent with the Furmaster. Opponent swings in for 7 here. Let's see how bad it gets. Another Shadow would probably end the game. Infiltrator, going to draw quite a few cards. They bottom them both here, so they'll draw 4 random cards. Right now they only have blue mana showing. Tapped land is good, and they have a chump blocker. Unfortunately for us, just the land. I think we have to hold back a few blockers here. send in 4. They can either block one of the tokens or trade with the burning tree. No point in playing out the mountain. And we will block their biggest creatures here. So don't think it matters which one we block with which. Our opponent can pick up the Ornithopter. Furmaster is typically not one you want to pick up. Kaito can stun one of our creatures.
Your tech is way. I love a dramatic entrance.
So here we need to come up with 3 more damage. Any of our lords will do it. Any burn spell. Well, now we need 4 damage. Forgot about the stun. Are they going to play out another blocker? They do. And flames can be cast at instant speed. Not quite going to be enough. 1 mana short from casting it naturally. Even if we could attack with all 3, then our opponent would still be able to survive. We would have been 1 damage short. And they have the force as well. So, tough matchup. Just came up a little bit short here. Stumbled in the beginning of the game with some of our lands. And we were on a mulligan. And our opponent is wasting our time. Hand isn't good enough. This one we can keep. And I think we put back the Ornithopter just in case our opponent is on a graveyard deck. Blue mana and Interlacer. Gleeful Demolition is good here. Could play out the Bushwhacker on 1. Unfortunately, I think we do have to just jam here. If they have an Emery, they have an Emery. Next turn, we can play the Emissary into the Hordemaster. Bushwhacker requires red-red. Love to see our opponent pass here. Retrofitter, while annoying, is manageable. And I do think we push damage over interacting with their artifacts at the moment. And that's enough for the concession. Good game. Unfortunately, with just 1 Great Furnace, I think this has to be a mulligan. This one we can keep. I'm going to put back the Goblin Grenade. Turn 1 we can Demolition. Turn 2 we can Emissary into Bushwhacker. Pretty powerful opening. Hall of the Storm Giants indicates that we could be up against a control deck, in which case we're probably going to win. Opponent down to 9. White mana means they could interact with the Hordemaster if they have removal. Could also have a counter spell. Reprieve is okay. Now we just need to dodge a board wipe. And they showed themselves the door. Good game. This hand is okay. We'll keep. Lead off on the Ornithopter and use the Rebirth. Pass the turn. Looting. So this is likely the Woodlands deck. Just going to be a race here. Hit for 8. Pass the turn. Love to draw into another Lord. Rumble will generate a Trump blocker. Let's see, they already have Omniscience, and they have Delirium as well. So here, if we stoke the flame, they'll go down to 7. Not enough to actually pressure their life total. So I think we're forced to take out their token here, try and slow them down. Hit for 4. And we do have lethal on board if they don't come up with a blocker, including the damage from Bonesaw. They do have a blocker, means they can play the Stomping Ground out tapped. They take Boseiju. And here they'll go get their Woodlands. So this is the last turn of the game. And unfortunately, a mountain is not going to do it. Opponent can just chump block here, and then they'll win next turn. Their hand would have to be pretty bad to lose the game here, which is what we're counting on. So pretty much any creature will win the game for them. Ulamog exile 2 of our creatures. That one we can still win through with the burn spell. Haywire Might gains life. And a Wayfinder. Unfortunately, the Bushwhacker just won't do it here. We can survive a hit. We'll mill half of our library. I think we might as well just cast it out. Can equip the Bonesaw, pass the turn. Here our opponent can use the looting, dig for a better creature. Could also use the Woodlands to get back Atraxa, gain a bunch of life. We'll see if they see the line. Taking them quite a bit of time to make a decision. And they go for Omniscience instead. And here they'll get Emrakul. Well, Elish Norn. That doesn't win it for them. So we need a Stoke the Flames off the top. Goblin Grenade. That would have done it if they didn't get the Norn. So, good game. We'll give this one a try. Opponent has some ramp here. What did they exile? Ugin.
Fools have sown
Demolition could be good in the matchup. We'll just start on a Rebirth for now. Pass the turn. Double Labyrinth, so our opponent is off to a phenomenal start on their end. See what Karn gets. One ring, could grab some ramp. Chalice of the Void we can deal with. So we'll take out the Karn. And then here I think we are forced to Demolition our Furnace. Just try and get some more pressure on the board. And our opponent concedes. I'm not sure that was the correct grab with Karn. They could have set up a play for a later turn. This hand is okay. Pretty much any hand that can use a Rebirth on turn 1 is a keep, especially with a 0-drop artifact. Prismatic Vista used to mean Woodlands combo, now it could mean anything. And this is going to be a graveyard deck. So they're going to be looking to reanimate something. Unfortunately, we don't have our Tormod's Crypt. Seems like this has happened a couple times in the matchups, so we've just had some bad variance on that, having the wrong half of our combo. Here they'll chump and discard. See how bad it is for us. Sarah's Emissary can name creature. In theory, we can burn it out, but it's going to be very difficult. We would need 2 spells. And it looks like our opponent doesn't have it on turn 2. Going to turn off their life-death with combat damage. Alright, so there you have the deck. Didn't quite perform as well as I was hoping it would. The matchups that we won quite handedly. It was quite apparent that the aggressive start completely overwhelmed our opponent's decks. However, if they were able to get any type of creature on board, I felt like we struggled to close games. The Goblin Grenade and Stoke the Flames weren't able to help us win any of the matches once our opponent was able to establish any type of board condition, which is unfortunate because that's really what they're in the deck for. And it seemed like either through a combination of variance or just in the matchmaking and what we were matched up against, it just didn't do well. Historic is a pretty fast format at the moment, and I'm not quite so sure that this deck is actually fast enough compared to other aggro decks, such as Wizards, where they have interaction for the opponent's creatures, as well as some more evasiveness on their own creatures, meaning they can better close out games. Based on that, I think if you're trying to play an aggro strategy, you probably want to use a different deck for now until this deck gets some upgrades. As always, I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more content.